The air on Kepler 442b tasted of ozone, wet earth, and something else, something like blooming mushrooms and faint cinnamon. Dr. Marcus Chen drew a breath through the suit's filtration system, but the phantom scent lingered in his mind, a product of the nanites in his bloodstream already cataloging the atmospheric particulates. It was a world saturated with information, and his first lesson was that not all of it came through sight or sound. He stepped off the ramp of the lander onto the spongy, moss-like ground that carpeted everything. Before him, the research outpost, a small collection of interconnected silver domes, hummed with a low thrum of life support and scientific endeavor. But Marcus's attention was captured by the welcoming party. 3 figures, tall and slender, stood waiting. They were the Veridians. Their forms were more fungal than animal, with tough, bark-like skin that shifted in color from mottled gray to a soft, verdant green. They had no discernible faces, no eyes or mouths that he could see. Instead, the top of their central stalk-like torso culminated in a complex, gill-like structure, a cap of intricate folds that pulsed gently. Marcus knew from the briefing vids that these were the source of their language. As he approached, the lead Veridian, the one designated as his primary contact, swayed forward. The gills on its cap flared, releasing a cloud of shimmering, pale gold particles. They drifted toward him, catching the light of the planet's dim, orange sun. His suit's external sensors immediately analyzed the biological release. A calm, synthesized voice spoke in his ear. Communication detected. Composition, pheromonal esters, complex proteins, airborne fungal spores. Translation, welcome, serenity, benevolent inquiry. Simultaneously, Marcus felt it. A strange, unearned sense of peace settled over him, quieting the frantic drum of his heart that had been pounding since atmospheric entry. It wasn't just a translation. It was a forced biological response. He was breathing their language, and it was changing his mood. The culture shock was profound, a physical and emotional immersion he had never anticipated. "I am Dr. Marcus Chen," he said, his voice feeling loud and crude in the quiet air. "I thank you for the welcome." He felt foolish speaking to a faceless being, but another, smaller puff of gold spores answered him. Understanding, acknowledgement. The Veridian designated to him was named, as best as the translation software could render its complex spore signature, Kalen. Kalen's movements were fluid, a slow, deliberate grace that seemed at odds with its rigid-looking form. It gestured with a long, 3-jointed limb towards the outpost. Dr. Eris Thorne, the expedition's lead xenobiologist, clapped Marcus on the shoulder, his touch startlingly solid after the ethereal Veridian greeting. "Get used to that," Eris said, his voice a gravelly counterpoint to the suit's serene translator. "They talk in moods. It's like trying to have a conversation with a sentient air freshener. Welcome to the bleeding edge of sociology, Marcus." Marcus managed a weak smile. "It's more direct than I imagined." "Direct, yes, precise." "Not so much," Eris grumbled, leading him toward the central dome. "They can tell you they're happy, sad, or curious. Try asking them to describe the reproductive cycle of the native fauna. You get a cloud of wonder and cyclical process. Infuriating. Inside, the outpost was a sterile bubble of humanity carved out of the alien wilderness. Monitors displayed atmospheric data, geological surveys, and biological scans. A team of 4 other scientists worked quietly, their faces a mixture of focus and exhaustion. This was humanity's most ambitious first contact mission in a century, living alongside a truly alien intelligence, not just observing it from orbit. His quarters were small, a bunk, a desk, and a small port looking out onto the forest that began just 100 meters from the camp's perimeter fence. As dusk began to fall on Kepler 442b, the forest began to change. Faint, pulsing lights appeared among the towering, fungi-like trees. Blues, greens, and soft violets flickered to life, turning the landscape into a living cathedral of cold light. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Later that evening, in the common area, Marcus had his first real conversation with Kalen. The Veridian stood patiently while Marcus calibrated his own rudimentary spore emitter, a device on his wrist designed to synthesize the basic emotional particulates. He tried to project gratitude and inquiry. The emitter whirred and puffed out a clumsy, pale yellow cloud. Kalen responded with a burst of the golden peace spores, followed by a new color, a soft, inquisitive blue. Translation: your emission is dissonant. The emotional tone is unclear, like a poorly struck chord, but the intent is perceived. Gratitude, inquiry, we understand. Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. I'm sorry. It's new to me. He decided to switch to verbal communication, relying on Kalen's audio sensors. My field is sociology. I study how societies form, how individuals interact within a group. Your people, you seem to have a collective consciousness in a way. When you feel something, is it felt by those around you? A complex cloud of spores erupted from Kalen's cap, a swirling mix of blue and silver. Intricate inquiry. We are individuals, yet we share the air. A strong emotion from one is a flavor for all. A sudden fear is a sharp scent that warns everyone. A deep sorrow is a heavy mist. Privacy of emotion is a concept we struggle to grasp. It seems isolating. Marcus had never thought of it that way. To humans, privacy was a right, a shield. To the Veridians, it was a punishment. He began to see the chasm between their evolutionary paths. Humans had evolved faces to display and conceal, language to clarify and deceive. The Veridians had evolved to be emotionally transparent, their very survival depending on the honest broadcast of their state of being. Deception, Marcus murmured, more to himself than to Kalen. How would you lie? The response was a puff of gray spores, the most jarring yet. It felt like static in the air, a scent of dust and confusion. Translation, negation. Concept not found. To admit a falsehood would be to change one's own biology. One cannot feel calm and project fear. The spores are a reflection of the self. To lie would be to not be oneself. Marcus leaned back, his mind reeling. A species without deception. A society built on complete, involuntary emotional honesty. As a sociologist, it was a treasure trove. As a human, it was terrifying. Over the next few weeks, Marcus fell into a rhythm. His mornings were spent with Kalen, venturing just beyond the perimeter fence into the bioluminescent woods. He learned to read the subtle shifts in spore density and color. A soft green puff meant contentment, a vibrant orange indicated excitement or discovery, and a thin, wispy gray was the spore of caution. He felt his own senses expanding, learning to pay attention to the air itself, to the emotional weather of the Veridians. He learned that their society was communal, with tasks assigned based on a collective sense of need, communicated through slow, pervasive drifts of spores that signaled things like hunger or need for repair. They had no leaders in the human sense, only focal points, individuals whose emotional broadcasts were stronger or clearer in a given situation. Kalen was a focal point for curiosity, which was why it had been assigned to the humans. The forest was a character in itself. Towering flora that resembled giant, calcified mushrooms stretched towards the sky, their caps dripping with phosphorescent goo that lit the forest floor. The ground was a springy mycelial mat, and the air was alive with the chittering of unseen arthropods. Marcus began to feel a deep affection for this strange, beautiful world. His bond with Kalen deepened. One afternoon, while observing a colony of hexaptal grazers, Marcus stumbled, twisting his ankle on an exposed root. A sharp pain shot up his leg, and he let out an involuntary cry. Instantly, Kalen pivoted, releasing a thick, acrid cloud of spores. The scent was sharp, like burnt sugar and ozone. Alarm, distress bane, warning. Other Veridians nearby immediately turned towards them, their own caps starting to pulse with the same acrid brown spores. The emotional contagion was instantaneous. A ripple of alarm spread through the forest. "I'm okay, Kalen. It's just a sprain," Marcus said, trying to wave them off. But his words were meaningless against the potent chemical signal of his pain. He fumbled with his wrist emitter, trying to synthesize a calm spore, but he was shaking too much. Eris Thorne's voice crackled over his comm. "Marcus, what's going on? The atmospheric sensors are going crazy. The Veridians are broadcasting a major distress signal." "I'm fine, Eris. I just twisted my ankle. It's me. They're reacting to my pain." It took nearly an hour for the collective Veridian alarm to subside. Kalen stayed by his side, its own form rigid with a transmitted anxiety it couldn't seem to shake. The event was a stark lesson for Marcus. His individual physical experience had become a community-wide event. He was a walking, talking emotional broadcast, whether he intended to be or not. But there was another presence in the forest, one that the Veridians' warning spores were truly meant for. Marcus had only seen them from a distance. The Shadowmaw wolves. They were the apex predators of this world, sleek and powerful creatures that moved with a terrifying silence. They were named for their dark, light-absorbing pelts and their uncanny ability to appear from the shadows as if conjured from the darkness itself. They had 6 legs, giving them incredible speed and stability over the uneven terrain, and their eyes, a piercing, intelligent yellow, seemed to miss nothing. Aris had studied them extensively. They're pack hunters, he'd explained one night over nutrient paste. Incredibly smart. They don't just rush their prey, they use flanking maneuvers, feints, they test defenses. The Veridians have a deep, instinctual fear of them. Their warning spores are a specific frequency the Shadowmaws can detect. It's a clear message. We see you. Stay away. The unspoken truth was that the camp's perimeter fence was the only thing that kept the humans from being part of that delicate predator-prey dance. The fence emitted a low-frequency sonic pulse that the wolves found intensely irritating. It was a line drawn in the sand, a declaration of territory. One evening, the mood in the camp shifted. A low, persistent hum of anxiety began to drift from the Veridian researchers who worked alongside the humans. It was a subtle, gray mist of spores that settled in the back of the throat, a taste of dread. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked Kalen, who was standing motionless facing the forest. Kalen's response was slow, the spores thin and diffused. "The air is wrong. The forest is too quiet. The chittering things are silent. The grazers have hidden. It is a hungry time, a hunting time." The human team went on high alert. Dr. Lena Petrova, the expedition commander, ordered a full diagnostic on the perimeter fence. The hum of the sonic emitters seemed louder that night, a reassuring thrum against the encroaching silence. As the twin moons of Kepler 442b rose, casting a pale, silvery light over the bioluminescent landscape, the attack began. It wasn't with a roar but with a flicker. The lights in the main dome dipped for a second, then stabilized. "What was that?" Marcus asked, his heart starting to pound. "Power fluctuation," Lena's voice came over the internal comms, tight and controlled. "Probably just a system reboot, but stay sharp." Then a new alert chimed, a frantic, high-pitched beep from the perimeter control console. "Contact, Section 4, something's testing the fence." On the main monitor, a security camera feed flickered to life. The image was grainy, shot in low light, but the form was unmistakable. A long, sinuous body low to the ground, 6 legs moving with fluid grace. Then another and another. A pack of Shadowmaw wolves had emerged from the darkness. They weren't throwing themselves against the fence, but moving along its length, their yellow eyes glowing in the camera's infrared light. They were testing it, looking for a weakness. One of them, larger than the rest, stopped and lifted its head. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of serrated, blade-like teeth. It let out a low, guttural growl, but the sound was absorbed by the sonic field. It was a silent, terrifying display of intent. Inside the dome, the Veridians were reacting. The air grew thick with their fear, a dizzying miasma of high-frequency spores that made Marcus's head swim. The translator screamed in his ear, "Terror, imminent danger, predator." Death, the spores were no longer a nuanced language, they were a raw, biological scream. The scent was overpowering, a coppery, metallic tang that tasted like blood. "They're panicking," Aris yelled over the din. "That scent, it's like ringing a dinner bell, it's pure prey scent. It'll drive the wolves into a frenzy." As if on cue, the wolves' behavior changed. They became more agitated, more aggressive, throwing their weight against the fence, their claws scraping against the metal pylons. The low thrum of the sonic emitters was the only thing holding them back. And then, with a shower of sparks and a sickening groan, it failed. A pylon at the far end of the camp, the one that had been flickering earlier, went dark. The low, protective hum died, leaving a hole in their sonic armor. The wolves poured through. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Lena was shouting orders, directing the crew to grab the tranquilizer rifles from the emergency lockers. But the wolves were fast, moving with a silent, coordinated deadliness. They fanned out, their dark forms melting into the shadows between the domes. They weren't attacking mindlessly, they were surrounding them. Marcus found himself standing near the main airlock, Kalen beside him. The Veridian was trembling violently, its body rigid with terror. The spores it was emitting were so concentrated that they seemed to shimmer in the air, a visible haze of pure fear. A few meters away, Aris was trying to aim a tranquilizer rifle, but his hands were shaking. The alpha wolf, the massive one from the camera feed, emerged from the shadow of a supply container. It was even larger up close, a creature of rippling muscle and predatory grace. Its yellow eyes fixed on the most obvious source of the fierce scent, Kalen. It ignored the humans, dismissing them as irrelevant. Its focus was entirely on the trembling, spore-spewing Veridian. The wolf lowered its head, its body tensing to spring. Aris wouldn't get a clear shot in time. The other humans were pinned down. This was it. In that split second, 200,000 years of human evolution and a doctorate in sociology collided inside Marcus Chen's brain. His academic mind, the part of him that analyzed and observed, went completely silent. Something older, something deeper took over. He was no longer a scientist. He was a primate, a pack animal facing a rival predator. He didn't think. He acted. He stepped directly in front of Kalen, placing himself between the Veridian and the alpha wolf. The wolf's yellow eyes snapped to him, its focus shifting. It seemed momentarily confused. This small, soft-skinned creature was interfering. First, Marcus broke the cardinal rule of prey. He met the alpha's gaze. He didn't look away. He stared directly into those intelligent, predatory eyes, holding them with an unwavering intensity he didn't know he possessed. It was a direct challenge, a universal language spoken by predators across 1,000,000 worlds. Second, he bared his teeth. He pulled his lips back from his teeth not in a smile, but in a primal, aggressive snarl. In human society, it could be a sign of mirth. Here, in this life-or-death context, it was a clear display of weaponry. I have teeth. I am not defenseless. Third, a sound ripped out of his throat, a sound he had never made before. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a low, guttural growl that started deep in his chest and vibrated through the air. It was a territorial sound, a sound of dominance and defiance. This is my ground. You are not welcome here. He took one small, aggressive step forward, planting his feet and making his shoulders as broad as possible. He was making himself bigger, claiming his space. The effect on the alpha wolf was immediate and profound. The creature, which had been coiled to strike, froze mid-tense, its head cocked, a flicker of genuine confusion in its yellow eyes. It had been processing a clear, overwhelming signal of fearful prey from the Veridian. Now, it was receiving a completely contradictory signal from this strange, two-legged creature. It was a signal the wolf understood perfectly, but had never expected from this source. It was the language of dominance, of a rival alpha. The wolf let out a responding snarl, a sound like tearing metal, but there was a new note of uncertainty in it. The predator's absolute confidence was shaken. To attack this bizarre, challenging creature might mean injury. Injury could mean weakness, and weakness could mean losing its place as alpha. The risk calculation had fundamentally changed. Marcus held his ground, his growl unwavering, his eyes locked with the wolf's. The air was thick with the stench of Veridian terror and the ozone crackle of his own adrenaline. For a long, silent moment, two alpha predators from different worlds, born under different suns, faced each other in a primal negotiation of power. The wolf broke eye contact first. It glanced to its left, then to its right, a subtle sign of de-escalation. The challenge was too strange, the potential cost too high. With a short, sharp bark to the rest of its pack, a sound that clearly meant withdraw, it turned and melted back into the shadows. The other wolves, following their leader's command, vanished as silently as they had appeared. The silence they left behind was deafening. The alarms had been cut. The only sound was the frantic, high-pitched pulse of the Veridian fear spores and the ragged gasps of Marcus's own breathing. The adrenaline began to recede, and a violent tremor took over his body. His knees felt weak, and he had to brace himself against the side of the dome. He had done it. He had faced down an alien apex predator with nothing but primate instinct. Slowly, the human team emerged from their positions. Aris lowered the tranquilizer rifle, his face a mask of disbelief. "My God, Marcus, what was that?" But Marcus wasn't looking at Eris. He was looking at Kalen. The Veridian had stopped trembling. Its tall form was perfectly still, its gill-like cap slowly pulsing. The overwhelming cloud of terror spores was beginning to dissipate, replaced by something new. A complex, swirling mixture of colors and scents billowed from Kalen's cap. The translator in Marcus's ear struggled to parse the novel combination. Signal analysis, new combination detected, core concepts, awe, fear, intense, reevaluation. Inquiry profound. Kalen took a slow, deliberate step towards him. The spores it now emitted were focused, directed only at Marcus. The synthesized voice in his ear became clearer. You changed. Your form did not alter, but your presence became sharp. A predator, you projected threat. You spoke the language of the shadow maw, but you used no spores. You used your body, your face, your breath. How? Marcus leaned heavily against the wall, trying to find the words. How could he explain millions of years of primate social evolution? The complex interplay of dominance and submission, of threat displays and appeasement gestures that were written into his very DNA. It's a part of what we are, he said, his voice hoarse. It's an older language, older than words. When humans are threatened, when our pack is threatened, some of us don't run, we push back. We make ourselves seem more dangerous than we are. Eris walked over, placing a steadying hand on Marcus's shoulder. He's right, Eris said to the silent Veridian. It's a dominance display, posturing. In our evolutionary history, it was how alpha males established control and protected the troop. Kalen remained silent for a long moment, its cap gills gently wafting the air, sampling Marcus's scent, the lingering adrenaline, the scent of a predator. The spores that followed were calmer, a deep, contemplative indigo. We perceived you as fragile. Your bodies are soft. You have no natural armor. You communicate with inefficient sound waves and conceal your emotional state. We believed your technology was your only strength. We were incomplete in our understanding. You conceal a predator within your soft shell. The incident, which the human crew quickly dubbed the Chen display, became a turning point in human-Veridian relations. The fence was repaired and reinforced, but the true change was not in the physical defenses of the camp, but in the psychological and sociological landscape. The Veridians' perception of humanity was fundamentally altered. They had viewed humans with a mixture of curiosity and a kind of paternalistic pity. They saw beings who were emotionally blind and deaf, stumbling through the universe in a state of self-imposed isolation, unable to share in the communal, honest broadcast of feeling. They were interesting, but they were not equals in the way that mattered most to the Veridians: emotional and existential transparency. Now they saw something new. They saw a species that possessed a second, hidden language, a potent, physical language of intent that was completely independent of their technology or their clumsy verbal communication. It was a language the Veridians couldn't speak, but one they, as inhabitants of a world with predators, understood on a cellular level. It was terrifying, but it was also, in a strange way, respectable. Marcus's relationship with Kalen transformed. The curiosity was still there, but it was now tinged with a deep, cautious reverence. Their conversations, mediated by spores and translators, delved into new territory. This hidden language, Kalen communicated one day, its spores a calm, philosophical blue. Is it always present? Are all of you capable of becoming a predator in a moment? In theory, yes, Marcus explained. It's called the fight-or-flight response. Adrenaline, instinct, but it's buried deeply. Most humans in our modern society live their entire lives without ever needing to access it. We build societies and laws to protect ourselves from each other, from the need for such displays. You build structures to contain the predator within, Kalen summarized, the spores swirling with the unmistakable signature of a profound insight. Perhaps your emotional isolation is not a weakness. Perhaps it is a necessary cage. The revelation sent ripples through Marcus's own understanding of his species. He had always seen humanity's capacity for deception and emotional concealment as a social flaw, a barrier to true understanding. But now, through the lens of Veridian perception, he saw it as a survival mechanism, an evolutionary trade-off. The Veridians had evolved complete transparency, making them a unified, empathetic whole, but also incredibly vulnerable to collective panic. Humans had evolved emotional shields, allowing for individuality, duplicity, and conflict, but also for calculated courage and the ability to fake it until you make it, to stand your ground even when terrified. The final report on the Chen display sent back to the Interstellar Consortium caused a firestorm in the xenology and sociology communities. The idea that a primal, non-verbal threat display could be a valid, even essential, tool in interspecies first contact was revolutionary. Protocols had always focused on appearing as non-threatening as possible. Marcus had proven that in certain contexts, with certain species, the opposite might be true. Sometimes, to earn respect, you had to show your teeth. On his last day on Kepler 442b, before his rotation ended, Marcus stood with Kalen at the edge of the perimeter, looking out at the now peaceful bioluminescent forest. For a long time, neither of them communicated. The silence was comfortable, filled with a shared understanding that transcended technology. Finally, Kalen released a single, gentle puff of spores. It was a color Marcus had never seen before, a complex, shimmering blend of gold and indigo. The translator hesitated, searching its lexicon for a match. After a moment, it offered a tentative translation. Kinship through shared fear. Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with spores or biological manipulation. It was a genuine connection, a bridge built not on words or data, but on a shared, terrifying moment in the pale light of two alien moons. He had come to this world to study an alien society, and had, in turn, discovered a fundamental, forgotten truth about his own. He looked at Kalen, at this strange, faceless, fungal being that was now, in some inexplicable way, his comrade. He didn't need his wrist emitter. He simply nodded and for the first time gave a small, genuine smile. A smile not of aggression, but of understanding. Kalen seemed to sense the difference. A soft, green puff of contentment spores drifted on the evening air, mingling with the scent of ozone and the faint, cinnamon-like perfume of the alien world. The forest glowed around them, a silent testament to the vast, complex, and beautiful universe, and the endless ways there were to survive within it. The echoes of his growl had faded, but the new understanding it had created would resonate for generations to come.